I've started making the tops of the cards now. I haven't been filming it all because, to be honest, it's incredibly boring. It's basically doing the same few things over and over again until you eventually get the shape that you want. So I start off with the flat blanks that I've cut, and then I run them through the roller here to start getting a curve in a flat plane to match the shape of the sides. So I'm using one of the sides as my template, and I put in a curve like this into the steel with the slip rollers, which gives me kind of a two-dimensional curve. So the steel is flat, but it curves down. A lot of that ends up coming out of it again, but I believe it helps, starting off with the curve you want and then shaping it to get that. The next thing that I do is run it through the bead roller there to get the roll on the edge. And when you put that in, the panel will flatten out again quite a lot. Because to curve around like this, the edge of this panel needs to shrink because it needs to take up less length, effectively, to be able to curve in that direction and curve in that direction. So then basically what I do is a combination of the shrinking jaws along the edge and the roller there, and I just keep doing that. I try to do it evenly on both sides so I don't end up with a twist in the panel, and eventually you end up with a shape like this, and this more or less matches the shape of this curve here. With these front guards, because they're quite long, I'm going to have to do this in two halves and then weld them together. So once you've done that, you end up with the right shape, but what tends to happen is the panel ends up very flat across the top here, or worse, it ends up slightly concave, so the sides come up and then the top sort of does that. That's rather exaggerated. If I put the steel rule on there, it's a bit hard to see, but it's very flat there. It's very flat. And there, you may just be able to see it's actually concave. Now, if you put that on the car, I can see it here by eye, but also up here you can see it's concave. If I can sort of show the gap, you can see the light under the rule there. So the next step is to run it through the English wheel. And the English wheel is over here with the rollers in it. And what this does is it puts shape back into the panel. So I end up running it through the wheel to put some curve into the top of the panel. That also ends up flattening it out a bit. So you also then end up doing more shrinking and more in the rollers there. And it's just a matter of going backwards and forwards, trying to get the right shape, and eventually what you end up with is a panel with some crown on it. You can see there's quite a bit there. That's not a huge amount, but it means the panel isn't flat. So when that's welded and that's on the car, that should look a lot better. I don't know if you can really see the difference on film like this, but in person it looks, if you want something to look flat, sometimes it needs to have a little bit of a curve so that it looks flat. If you make it flat, it'll look wrong because it'll look like it's sort of depressed in the middle. It's a little bit of an optical illusion. So just that little tiny bit of curve on the top of the panel just makes it look better. Now, I have been a little bit rough. You can see a groove along there probably. And that's just when I'm not being careful enough in the bead roller and I let the panel, instead of being flat, I let it drop a bit or raise it up. And then the edge of the wheel sort of catches in and it causes that groove. Because this corner here is quite sharp. I am wondering if I should radius those off actually. That may help prevent that a little bit. But as long as I'm careful, it's okay. And also, once this is all welded and the top's welded onto the sides here, I'm going to have to go through and hammer and file all of this anyway. So I think that should all hammer smooth once I'm done. But that's the start. Like I say, I've just put the shape in one of them. I'll probably go ahead and do the other one now. And then I need to do the rear half. The rear half is a little bit trickier because it's kind of got this little reverse curve in it. But effectively you do that the same way, but instead of shrinking the edge, you stretch it. So if this is longer here, it'll make this panel want to come up. That's the theory anyway. I'll see how it goes.